Hey guys, this is Alex Dracott here. I'm here to give a little bit of a demonstration of my processes and techniques. I'm going to be building out a little nature scene in Unreal 4 for 3D World. This is to accompany the article that was written for them, and hopefully kind of elaborate on some of the tips and advice that I gave in that through a practical application that you guys can follow along with and hopefully learn something from. I'm going to be making it in Unreal version 4.7.6. I can't really think of anything version specific in case you're using an older version. The foliage lighting model was added in 4.7, but you can use the subsurface lighting model as a substitute. Shouldn't be too big of a difference outside of some perf and post stuff, but I can get into that a little bit. From an asset side of things, I've kind of supplied some images to go along with, or not some images, some assets to go along with everything. Some models, trees, bushes, some plants, stuff like that, rocks, some terrain bits that we can use, and then some textures, some nature textures. Nothing too crazy, but it should be pretty cool. It should be pretty exciting, and it should be enough to get us building something cool. The other thing I'm going to be doing is including the starter content, which you can see here. There's really not much there that we're going to be using, but they've got some extra textures, extra materials that we may, just benefit from quickly. So to start things off, I'm going to make a new project. I'm storing it on one of my hard drives. I'm just going to call this Alex 3D World project. Kind of get things going. So I should preface this by saying I'm going to be going into a lot of the descriptors for what I'm doing and why I'm doing them. However, I'm probably not going to go super intro friendly. Like, kind of assume that you've got at least a little bit of an understanding of an Unreal. I'll cover some stuff like, this is the basic Unreal UI. You've got your toolbar up here, your modes, which dictate, if you're vert painting or working on landscape or placing objects, your content browser where everything is stored, your outliner, which is keeping track of the things in the scene, and the detail window. But I'm not going to be going super in depth into many of these outside of stuff that pops up that I may just want to share. If you are looking for more of that intro level Unreal stuff, they're going to their Epic's YouTube channel and going through their Learn tab in the Unreal launcher is a great way to get started. But speaking of getting started, I'm just going to do a little bit of UI customization, which I love doing, just to a little bit more window space. I'm just moving the modes over to the outliner side so that I have more space to see. This is the default startup for with the starter contents, just a little map with some chairs. Over on the left, you can see I'm missing a little bit with the content browser. This is some of the starter content they give, some architecture stuff, some demo blueprints. Really, the only stuff that I'm super interested in is some of these materials, which we may just apply on our own, depending on what we if we see a good opportunity for it. And they've got some particles and stuff like that we may play with, but pretty much we're going to be focused with the content that I supplied. So speaking of that, get the ball rolling and make a new folder. My content doesn't like spaces. I'm actually going to just drag this out to the top there, and inside I'm going to make a models folder and just right-click import. If the UI option is visible, you can import from here. And I'm going to go to just to the folder where I've got all these assets. The alder black are trees. I've got a couple of different grass cards, and then a good variety of rocks. To start things off, I'm going to grab all of the small, tiny, and medium rocks and the terrain chunks, and just import all of those at once, just because I know that there's nothing really complicated with any of them. I'm not going to grab materials, I'm not going to grab textures. This little window is the FBX import window. It's got a couple of useful options in here. I'm not going to have it generate light maps. I'm not going to have it generate collision. I do want it to replace vertex colors on re-import, and that's something I'll kind of get into later that Unreal can be a little picky about. Oh, cool, you can even have it invert normal maps. I did not know that that was an option. Because normal maps are flipped in the green channel for Unreal 4 versus some other standard 3D software. So I'm just going to go ahead and click import all, and it's going to bring in all of those with that setting and add them nicely. So you can see they all plopped in. I'm going to do the same thing again, but this time I'm going to grab just large rock 01 and 02. And I'm doing that. I think I'm going to actually grab all the same settings. The reason I was going to do those separately is because large rock 01 and 02 are a little high try count, and I've got some LODs, and I don't want to grab the LOD version, although you can set up scenes in Maya to auto-export. Like you can group by level of detail, and then it will remember that and bring everything in at once. That's not something I'm going to be doing for these rocks. I'm going to be doing them manually. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click and edit, and it's going to pop up these two rocks, which are gigantic terrain rocks, which can be super useful to plop all over the place. And I'm just going to, I believe it is, maybe you have to do it in the content browser. Yeah, here we go. So I'm going to import LOD, rock 01, go to assets, models, and then I've got rock 01 low, and I'm actually going to do it the same way here. Rock 02 low. I'm just going to save this out. It's asking if I want to change because technically that version of the open file is different. But now I've got two different versions of the rock. You can see LOD element 0 and 1 over here. I can force switch between them. Okay. I guess that this one didn't have. Maybe I grabbed the wrong file. Rock 01 large. Nope. I guess I actually don't have an LOD for this rock. Well, actually I do. I just have it somewhere else. So I'm actually gonna take care of that really quickly. Let's make sure that the second rock, if that actually, okay, so the second rock actually does have the LOD, so you can actually see the try count change in the top left. It's a pretty nice substantial change. We may tweak the distance later, just so that it doesn't pop out so near because this rock is gigantic. And I know, so this is where so I've got a bunch of other models elsewhere in my computer, but I've got rock 01 low. So I'm actually going to open up Maya really quickly and just take a peek to make sure that those are actually the low files that I thought they were. And I know it may seem like I'm getting a little sidetracked, but when you're building out these big scenes and you know that you're going to have something that's going to be a potentially large hit on the try count, LODs can be really important. So I'm going to grab this in here. Okay, so it looks like I just straight up don't have the low LOD version that I thought I did, so I'm just going to ignore that for now. Going back, I'm going to keep importing my models. This grass card 06 is like the main grass that we're going to be using. Actually, you can import that. The reason I'm calling it, there it is, grass card 06. And this one, I actually do want to import mesh LODs because I've got LODs set up for this mesh. So now you can actually see it pop through the different LODs. It's popping through 1 and 2 really quickly. I'm going to just kind of change. I'm just going to change some of these settings. I'm enabling custom distances. And then this number here is actually screen size. I don't really want it popping out too soon, so I'm going to actually change these numbers to be pretty low. So there we go. Now you can see it transition the LODs in the top left corner. And then I'm actually going to do the same for I believe Grass 07 both as well have custom LODs. Yeah, so they have one LOD each. I'm going to do the same thing, just kind of drop that distance so it doesn't pop out quite as big. Let's see, just 0.1. No, that's too high. Go 0.05. Close enough. I'm just going to do the same thing here. Turn off auto compute. Screen size 0.05. All right, there we go. And you'll see what materials line up to a lot of these, going forward. I believe. Okay, so the only other things that are going to be relevant that we want to grab. I'm going to grab Alder 3, 3 no leaf, and 4. I'm going to import all of those. I do want to combine the meshes. What that means is that's going to combine the individual meshes within the FBX files, and I know just because I made the file a couple minutes ago that I've got the leaf material separated from the trunk material, like those are two separate meshes, and I want to make sure that those are combined into one. However, you've got to be careful because if you're importing a mesh with LODs, having that setting checked can potentially merge everything together and cause problems. So, good to know about that. The vert color import option, this doesn't impact anything on import, but if you're re-importing and reiterating on vertex colors in engine, it can be important to know, because if you have ignore on and you're just re-importing hoping it's updating the vert color, it won't. And it will drive you nuts till you figure out that you missed one little setting. So it's good that, just to be aware of what you need. Like, for example, this is a tree. I do a lot of my wind animation using vert colors, so that's going to be something that, potentially you would want to know. So, yeah, and you can do the vert color override if you wanted to set it as something specific. I'm not importing materials, everything else is the same. I'm just going to import all. And so Alder 3 is this, that came in a little bigger than I wanted, but 3 is like this little sapling, and then 3 no leaf is the sapling without leaves, and then black, or Alder black is 4 is like a full-size tree. And I do have an LOD, so I'm going to grab an LOD for Alder Black 04. And Autosave has decided to catch everything up. Something to know, that little autosave where it's compiling, big texture, stuff like that, if you've got a material compiling and it's really big, like it's compiling 20,000 instructions or something like that, it will actually try to finish all of that before it saves it, but it won't update the visuals. It will look like the engine is frozen, and we may actually run into that, and who knows what it would do to the recording, but it's good to be aware of the fact that your engine hasn't crashed, it's just kind of finishing and compiling. Some other quick stuff about the windows, I can make you see like I did. Yeah, there we go. This is a pretty expensive tree. It's pretty much like a hero tree. Because we're going to be, making something very pretty, I wanted to go really high detail on this. But it pops out detail-wise pretty quickly. I'm gonna mess with the screen size a little, so it pops out around there. It's still a bit close. There we go. It's not bad. Modern engines can push quite a large amount of tries. If you were importing these trees through SpeedTree or something like that, you could have even set up billboards. There's a bunch of other ways that this SpeedTree could have been made a better LOD than what I'm demonstrating. So to keep the ball rolling, I'm going to import my textures. It's just the other asset folder. Really not going to do anything crazy fancy with this. I'm just going to grab all of them and hit import. And it's going to think. It's letting me know that certain textures were imported as a normal map, which is fantastic. So yeah, that's just thinking a bunch. And some of these textures are pretty high res, and you can cap their in-engine max. But I'm working, most of the terrain textures are 2K textures. I've got some noise textures and stuff in there. You know, just to give you a little bit of visual. Got a couple different bark types we can play with. Maybe use for different things. Actually, this texture didn't need to be included. I got like a noise texture, and I think when it comes to terrain stuff, in fact, a lot of natural stuff, I tend to just approximate roughness. I don't tend to make a full texture for it unless there's a specific need. So grass and rock, there's a little bit of a difference there. Obviously, mud and rock, I wanted a difference there. But stuff like the cliffs, I'm not going to be super reliant on making something very specific there. So yeah, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a new scene. In fact, I'm actually going to file, new level, and I'm going to start with the default level. Do I want to save this map? I do not want to save this map. So this is our level, and I'm actually going to save it. Oh, so when you save, it's got to actually go through and save each individual asset the same way the autosave did a couple minutes ago, but it did it somewhere else, which is important because things can go drastically wrong sometimes. As anyone that's worked with a 3D piece of software knows, it can just kind of explode occasionally, and it's great to have backups, and it is great to have autosaves. Let's let that finish. It's gotta do all the textures. So one of the things I can talk a little bit about is just reference. I'm going to be loading in a huge file. This is PureRef. This is a really fun program. I recommend it. It's great for you know, anyone that wants to collect a large group of images in one place. And it's resolution independent, which means you can zoom in and crop and add a ton of images and batch process folders, and it really is a great program. But I've got this giant collection of what I just love, just like nature forest. There's some stuff for forest fires too. And I'm just going to keep this handy. This is just going to be on the right side of my screen while I work, and I'll pull it over if I'm going to reference something directly, but it's going to keep me, you know, thinking about spaces and stuff like that, as well as lighting when it comes down to it, because, you know, we're going to want to pick, you know, time of day and things along those lines. So, yeah, so we've got this level, now that the saving is done. The most important thing that I like about this default level is, one, it comes with, you know, atmospheric fog with a nice little starting setup, but it also has this BP sky sphere. And the BP sky sphere, for, you know, for simple little projects like this, I think it's great because it comes with the sun, and it comes with the clouds, and you can mess with the you can mess with the horizon fall off if you don't have it getting dictated by a light source. Yeah, it actually plugs into like a singular light source in the scene. It doesn't update dynamically, but it updates statically. So if I rotate this to be at more of like a, you know, sunset angle, then I hit refresh material, it's going to change everything, which is really nice. And we may use that later on, but for now I'm just going to keep it a sunny day. You know, I'm gonna keep things a little bit organized. You can create folders in your scene, so I'm going to say this is like global lighting, and I'm just going to throw in the atmospheric fog and the light source in here. I'm not going to really be building this out as a level to run around, and this is very much a visual focused project. I may you know, talk about it at some point, but for the most part, keeping it pretty focused on the visual, not going to be talking a lot about collision and stuff like that. So I'm going to save this level out, as this is my map, very original name. And, you know, before we really get in and start building it out and playing with lighting and all these kind of crazy things, we got to make some materials, so we can get these textures on some of the models that we made. So I'm going to go ahead and make a materials folder. The way I tend to work is making a base material and then iteratively building up collection of instances based on that base material, and if I need a variety, or if I need some form of variety, I'm going to do it, I'll make another base material at that point. And I can already tell you that one of the most important tools that I use is I like to make blend shaders, because I think vertex colors are the bee's knees. I think they're amazing. You can use them for anything. I mean, I have found countless uses for vertex colors. And for those that don't know, you know, every vert has an X, Y, and Z location. Well, it also has an RGB A location, and in fact, some engines you can even have it store an extra sets of vert colors. But for Unreal, it's got 4 channels that you can use. You can use them for texture blending, which is what I'm going to set up. You can use them for all other kinds of demonstrations. So I'm actually gonna make this is a blend material, and I'm actually going to set up a pretty simple system. So if you think about it logistically, if you've got red, green, blue, and alpha, and no color, you can actually blend in 5 materials. And that's not what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to just I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to, at least to start, I'm just going to blend in 3, and then maybe later on, for now, just start with painting in 3 materials. So this is the material editor window. This is where everything is going to go in the long run. The main node I'm going to be using to blend is a lerp that just blends between value A and B based on value C, and then Epic pleasantly includes a bunch of useful functions, one of which is a height lerp. A height lerp blends between A and B based on C, the transition phase, but it allows for a height texture to kind of offset things, which is just awesome. So to get started, I'm actually going to drag this out here like that, just so we can see. I'm going to be making a 3 texture blend. So I'm going to just set it up so it blends between grass, mud, and rock to get the ball rolling. So I'm going to grab in all of my textures that I need. So I've got my grass normal map. I should also say my grass diffuse is where I keep my height map in there, which we'll be using for blending. But more importantly, I'm going to be setting these materials up to work with tessellation, because I think tessellation is a great way to get up close detail. And really, I want this scene to be something that is, consistently high fidelity. The assets that are putting in are very high end, so it's kind of one of those, like, if the texture's high res, the model's high res, just go for broke, make everything look really nice. Or if you're going to try and hit a minimum spec, like I want to make something that could, work on last gen or mobile or something like that, make everything consistently at that level, just to, keep everything unified. But for this, we're going for broke. The try count's going to be high, the texture resolution's going to be high, the memory's going to be high, and we're going to use tessellation and a bunch of other fancy tricks to make it look pretty. So I'm also going to grab the roughness, and now I'm going to grab the mud textures. I got the mud normal, the mud roughness, and the mud albedo. And then I've got cliffs. I'm going to grab the rock diffuse and the rock normal. And this blend shader is going to be everything for us. And I'm actually going to start separating them out by groups of materials. So in general, the order is going to be grass, grass, then rock, and mud, but I'm actually going to change that around pretty quickly. When you've got a blend material system, there is going to be an order to how they blend. So I'm going to get rid of that. The other node that we're going to need a lot of is vertex color. Vertex color is the vert color on the mesh. So, so to get things started, I'm going to actually full screen this again, close that out. The way a blend shader works is it's going to layer every texture is going to have a priority, and then if every vert color that needs to be blended in is there, the highest priority image comes in last. So logistically speaking, grass is probably going to come in last, rock is probably going to be first, and mud is probably going to be in the middle, which is going to be great because it means we can call in each one of those individually. But for now, I'm going to start with just the dirt, and let's see. I can't remember. Oops, wrong. I'm just going to test to see if it carries. Oh, just want to grab the alpha channel. The component mask is a node that's useful for grabbing each individual. Yeah, so grabbing each individual channel from an image or from an import source. So to start things off with, at the base is going to be the blend between rock and mud. So I'm gonna set it up. I'm going to start with the height lerp. The great thing about the height lerp is that it always blends. It always blends everything together on the height texture, but then it gives you the resulting alpha that it's using, which you can then use for regular lerps to save runtime performance. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to blend in between this diffuse and that diffuse. I'm actually going to use the, I don't know which height texture I want to use, so I'm going to use a static switch. I'm actually going to use a static switch parameter. Parameters are values that can be changed. So I'm going to say, call this one use red channel height. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want the option to switch between. I actually want that backwards. I want the option to switch between the red and the base channel's height for the height texture. Another great thing about Unreal 4 is you can group parameters. So I'm going to actually group this under blending because this is stuff to do with blending. I'm also going to make a new parameter and call this red channel contrast. Contrast is fantastic. It's the other plugin for this. It lets you kind of decide how sharp the height texture is going to come in and how sharp that blend texture is going to be. And we may do some other stuff to boost that out later, but I'm also going to put this in blending. Now it's just a drop-down venue. And I'm going to make the default value 0.5 because I feel like it. Actually, because I think it's a little soft by default. So I've got those two blending in, but we need a transitionary phase. This is where the vertex color node is going to come in. So now, where there is red, it will blend in. B, and we can actually test this really quickly. So I'm gonna hit apply, which is needed to make all the materials update. I'm gonna go to materials, just drag this onto here. It's gonna compile because it's on a new mesh. You can actually, what I'm doing is I'm switching between these modes with the shift buttons, but it only works once you're in the active viewpoint or viewport. So I'm going to switch to vert painting mode. I can actually see that this image is white by turning on the debug mode. I'm just going to flood it black, which means the rock is coming through. And it's tiling and weird, and we're not using this mesh, so we don't have to worry about it. But if I wanted to paint, I could go in here. I actually like to keep it just black and white because you can control what channels you paint on. So I'm just going to paint on the red channel. And this is a really, really low tessellation plane that they've got just the default for. But yeah, you can see we are painting in stuff, which is pretty much what we wanted. So I'm going to back out of that. And I'm actually going to set up the next blend section, which is adding in the grass on top. So the alpha from the height lerp is going to come in, and then we're going to blend between the previous results of the last blend and this blend. Which means wherever there is green, because green is going to be the transition node, oops, sorry, I actually did this wrong. Sorry, I meant to copy this over. The alpha from these two is going to be used down here. The results from this are going into input A. results are coming back, because this is also going to be a height blend, and this one I want blending in off the green channel height. The transition phase now is the green vert color, and then I'm going to do green channel contrast, which is going there. And actually, because I'm paranoid and I've been recording a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and check that the size is still going up and that everything is recording. Okay, it is. Good. So yeah, so now I've got a green channel contrast. I've got everything coming in. We can demonstrate this if I go into apply. It's going to take a little bit to update, but now if I were to paint white into the green channel, it's now layering that on top, which is exactly what I wanted. Cool. So this is exciting. We've got most of the tricky stuff set up. I'm gonna, we're probably gonna be revisiting this material a lot. It's not all said and done. But the next step is mimicking this setup for roughness. And I don't have a roughness texture for the brick, or for the cliff. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to make a new static switch parameter, and I'm going to call it use, what am I going to call it? Essentially what I want the option is, use flat roughness value for base. That's too long. Base, use value for base roughness. It's complicated, but this stuff's going to get tricky. What this is essentially going to do is it's going to let me, and I'm going to default it to true because I know we're really not making lots of versions of this, is it means if this parameter is true, use this parameter, which is going to be base roughness, instead. And I'm going to set this at like 0.8 because I know I'm probably going to need a high roughness value. And then I've got the roughness for the mud, which is coming in second, so that's going to be blended into B and A. And here is what I was talking about. We can use the alpha to blend that roughness in, and then we mirror the results. The results of that go into A. This is the roughness for the grass, that goes into B. And the alpha of this is the alpha of the height lerp, and then this goes into roughness. And now we have it actually blending everything in correctly. My chair is starting to be a little weird. Cool, so this is getting a little confusing, so we're going to do a bit of organization. I'm just going to comment this and say this is the albedo blending. I'm going to call this the roughness blending. And for now, I'm going to plug in a 0 into metallic, and then I'm going to plug in a 0.5 into specular. For non-metallic stuff, the specular range really is not huge, and 0.5 can approximate for a very large amount of the like the materials out there. And then I'm going to just pretty much copy the results again, so I'm grabbing the alpha again from that height lerp and the alpha again from this height lerp. Here is the grass normal, putting that in. Here is the mud normal, that goes into B, and then here is the cliff normal that goes into A, and then that all sits in normal, which is awesome. So there we go. We have a blend material. There's a couple more things I'm going to do. I can go in and I can actually color code these a little bit, which I like to do just to help. And then I'm also going to parameterize all these textures, and the reason I'm going to do that is that we can swap these textures out for different versions of this material on different objects. So I'm actually going to go in and say this is base red, this is base albedo. Actually, you know what? Unreal uses the term diffuse. We'll use the term diffuse. Base diffuse. And then, because it's a parameter, I can still go in and group it. I'm actually going to make a textures group. So, and I'm going to do this for all of them. So this is convert to parameter. This is red diffuse. And this is green diffuse. This is base roughness. And I know the diffuse texture is just plugged in there right now. It's because I just don't have a different one. And this is red roughness. This is green roughness. And then down here we have green normal. Parameter. Sorry, that's what I'm doing with all this stuff is this is red normal. You can right click on certain nodes and can parameterize them. So for constants you can do it too. Just right click, convert to parameter. Now it's parameter constant. Doing this for this. Click normal. Alright, everything's plugged in. Everything is nicely grouped and organized. Oh, the one thing I forgot to do, I'm going to grab all of these texture nodes and just do what I did before, which is group them into textures. Which is great. So now we have our blend material. As you can see here, it's all blendy and stuff. Technical term. So I'm actually just going to kill that on here. And I'm going to make a new folder in my contents called Material Instances. Oh, nope. Let's just call it Instances. Because I never want to use this base material. I always want to make instances. Let's just call this terrain blend, or mi terrain blend 1. I'm going to move this into instances. The great thing is you can even make instances of instances. But now I've got I've got these terrain chunks, which are just going to be fantastic for building out the level, because I can go in and take groups of them and stick them together and stuff like that, and kind of have fun building everything out. So I just thought of a couple more things that I want to do to the base material. By the way, this is what the material instance window looks if you open it up, so you can see those parameters that we made. I'm going to do a couple things actually. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up for tessellation, and unfortunately the height lerp is only blending in vector 3, so it's not including the alpha channel. So you guys know the drill. I'm just going to be making another duplicate of everything that was here before, but I'm going to be doing it for the displacement map, so for the height blend map. So this is I'm also going to change this to true by default. I've decided I want the red channel by default to dictate the red's textures blending. But I'm actually not going to duplicate all these textures. I'm just going to pull in their alpha nodes, the height texture that we've been using. So I'm going to blend between those. So now I have my, essentially what I've got here is a displacement. And I need to plug this into the material. So the first thing we need to do, and over here on the, I should have explained this earlier, in case you haven't figured it out. Material editor window, here's the tooltips on the top. We've got a bunch of different awesome functions that Epic has made for us. All the Photoshop blend modes. It's great. So down here we have all of the basic options for the material. And the one that we care about is down in Tessellation. I'm going to use PN triangles. I want crack-free displacement. And that's going to open up this tessellation multiplier. And this is where it's not just you plug in your height map into the multiplier. The multiplier dictates how powerful the tessellation is turned on. And we can absolutely put in a flat value and just say, hey, let's just put in 1, and then it's always tessellated. But that's not really the benefit of tessellation, because then you might as well tessellate at that height to begin with. Sorry. What we're looking to do is we we want control over that displacement. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to generate a value that changes based on the distance away from the camera. So I'm going to actually get the pixel location, which is the absolute world location of, I think it's called world position. Yeah, coordinates world position. And we're going to use the distance node between that and the camera position. And then we're going to divide this by a number, and that we're essentially using the let's see, we'll call this displacement gradient, and this divider is going to what this little chunk of material here is going to do is it's going to make a nice gradient that goes from the camera to out the to the pixel from black to white, or it's actually, I think it's going to go from white to black, and I'll show you what it does really quickly. I'm actually going to make this like 500. It's going to compile this, put this on. Just go to unlit view so we can see. So you can see as I get close, it fades in black. And if I were to go into the terrain blend material, just put this here, and I were to start there we go. Looks like I forgot to group one of the parameters, but if I go in and start to change this, it's going to change the size of that gradient, and apparently lag my computer out a little. So I'm going to close, I'm going to turn that off and close this and go back to my material. Really quickly going to fix this, that this wasn't in, let's group this into material properties. And that'll be the group we use for stuff like if we change actual things to do with the, the material itself. Oh, you can even see in the viewport it's starting to do it. But anyway, disconnect this, connect this back to the base color. You can shortcut connect stuff, so back to the base color like that. And then I'm actually going to add a displacement offset value. So this is going to let us push that value one way or another. So what we can do is have displacement go, like if we want that gradient to start farther back, then we can add to that value and make the gradient of where it fades out appear farther back, which is really where we're going to do most of our range control for the tessellation multiplier. And finally, I'm just going to clamp it because I don't want those numbers to get too big, and keep it between 0 and 1, and then I'm going to put this into the alpha of a lerp, and then I'm going to use two separate parameters to control the lerp. So this is going to be tessellation max, or tessellation multiplier. I'm going to group this into tessellation, which I may have spelled wrong. Nope. No, I did. No, I didn't. Okay, we're good. Putting that into the value and 0 into the base, and that way we can customize the value that we want that multiplier to happen. And then we've got the results of this displacement map. So we're going to take the I'm going to group this, just say spec for now. Spec. So I'm going to take all this stuff. I'm going to actually group this into tessellation. This is test multiplier. We won't be using tessellation on everything. We'll also be able to duplicate a lot of stuff once we have it. But I want to take the results of these nodes, and I want to have the ability to play with it a little bit. So I'm gonna multiply. We're just gonna, if it's a value from 0 to 1, it's gonna multiply by a scalar. So we're gonna put in a scalar parameter. So we want tessellation or displacement boost. Actually, boost is the wrong word choice. Multiplier. We'll put this in tessellation. And the last thing we're going to do is we're actually going to grab the vertex normal world space coordinates. And what this is gonna do is a vector is a line in 3D space. So we want, when we apply this tessellation, we want it to not just happen in world space coordinates. We want it to happen relative to the mesh normal itself. So we're gonna multiply that node again, and then just connect this to world displacement. There's a couple things to know about tessellation. It is perf hungry. There is always a max on how much a mesh will get tessellated when it comes to a mesh, and you can actually see right now everything is actually hooked up to this mesh. I'm going to open up the material instance again, and we're going to look at those tessellation properties, because I can see that the tessellation isn't changing at the rate that I want it to. So I think one of the things is that I've got it backwards, which is I've got the wrong nodes plugged in, so it's actually removing tessellation. It's removing tessellation when I get closer, and it's not happening nearly at the distance that I want. So this is where that offset's going to be useful, because I'm going to offset it by 500. Maybe it is working right. Let's offset it by 200 to see what that range is. I'm trying to get a measurable difference in the tessellation. I think it's simplifying as we go out. But I'm not actually seeing the difference that I want to see. Let's try 50. So I'm actually gonna. This is the displacement offset. I'm gonna make it really, really high, in the hope that we can. There it is. It's fading out over distance. So it is doing what it's supposed to. And you can see oh, you know what? That's the other thing I forgot, is that we want this same mask to apply to the vertex offset, because we don't want the normals that are left over doing all kinds of freaky stuff. So I'm actually going to copy this lerp. Have this lerp between nothing and something, and then connect that to world displacement. There we go. Let that compile and see what it does. Something weird is going on. So you can actually see it is adding more and removing it as we get closer. But I want to. Oh, you know what? I'm stupid. I was entering the wrong number. Goes to show. Make sure you can see the names of stuff that you're entering. So this is the multiplier is the height multiplier. So I'm going to set this to. Apparently engine breakingly high. 25. And you can see if I keep updating it, it's going to increase it. And then this is the offset. So if I go into the wireframe, I can actually pull in. The number that it goes to. I'm going to decrease the size of the gradient. Actually pull it really, really close. So by putting in a negative value, I'm actually like pulling it away from the camera. There you go. You can see it come in like that. So I was right. I actually have, because this is pretty much the opposite of what we want to have happen. So I actually have those reversed, but since I don't want to bother changing that gradient, I'm just going to swap what number is going where in the lerp, and then recompile. So that was a little problem solving. So now you can see, as it gets closer, it's actually going to displace, which is really cool. You know what? I actually changed my mind. I do want it displacing without the lerp for now. And if this was a longer project, I would actually set it up so that I have the option for it. Because there's going to be some times where you want it to do that, sometimes when you don't. But I kind of like the ability, I kind of like the fact that it's offsetted at all times. The Tessellation multiplier, so now we can actually play with that gradient a little. So if I want that gradient to be bigger, if I want it to be got it. 25. We're working on a really, really small scale here, which is part of the reason why some of this stuff is being so finicky. Yeah, there we go. It's not too bad. Means for nice close-up shots, we'll have some of this like nice little variation on the ground. It's cool. It's neat. There's some vertex breaking and stuff like that, and that's occasionally can be a problem with some of these displacement options. I think that actually may be a part of the crack-free displacement not liking how I've set some stuff up, so I'm going to go in and actually mess with this. PN triangles are going to try and round stuff out. Versus like the other triangles, which just go in and add it on their flat tessellation, which just adds things like very mathematically. It's the same with that adaptive stuff. If I were to go with flat tessellation, we'll still see detail added, but it's going to make a slightly sharper tessellation. And these are settings that you can play with and figure out what the most efficient way for you to go about it is, or the most useful thing. Like tessellation can be used in so many different ways. Keep adaptive on, crack free on, switch to that, see what happens. But yeah, so we've got our base material done, and I think it is time to start. And I'm actually gonna just push that out farther, and I'm gonna lower this multiplier just a little bit. There we go. Be a little too low. Let's go 25. And the nice thing is you can just kill the tessellation if you want temporary performance from the visuals. But I'm going to close that, and we've got a ground, so we could actually go out and start painting in different colors. I'm gonna erase from the red and the green. Make the cliff appear. I can just paint in the red on top of this. And you can see, even though that I'm painting in the red in some places, it's not actually blending it in at all. That's because the green is taking blend priority. So, I actually decided there is one more thing that I want to do with this material, and that is add in some UV control. So I've got a UV coordinate node. I made that just by holding down U, and I'm actually going to do 3 different things. If you multiply a UV coordinate node by a constant, you can change its size, which is great. So I'm going to actually go in, not have it set to 0 by default, and have it set to 1 by default. And then I'm going to plug this into every UV where the base material is. Now, when this is parameterized, I'll be able to actually go in and change the UV scale on a per material instance basis, which is just very, very useful. So this is red, and this is green. Should do two of these at once. Green, two red. Let this in all this UV control. And I'm plugging these in the back of these textures, which is affecting those UVs. And there's different ways to mess with that. You could do like even world projected UV and stuff like that. But for now, just keeping things nice and simple. I'm going to apply that. I'm actually going to close this down. And we're going to get to the next material we're going to make, which has to do with trees. So I've got, kind of like that. So now I could say like, oh, that cliff just isn't tiling right, or I need more, I need more options or something like that. Or I need more fidelity, or the scale is wrong. And now I have the option to actually tweak that stuff, which is fantastic. Yeah, so the next thing I'm going to do is, I'm going to make a, you know what, I'm going to start by making a grass material. And my grass cards look like this. The reason they're lighting a little weird even already is because I've unified the normals. The reason this is doing a weird thing is because snapping is on, which I'm not a, it's great to have, but don't really want for organic stuff. Oh yeah, if you select something and you alt drag, it's gonna duplicate it for you. And then alt S is duplicate, or control S is duplicate. But yeah, so this is my grass. And it doesn't look like grass right now. The texture I've got is pretty standard. It's a squash texture, just so it can grow a little vertically. The alpha is just, you know, what you would expect. There's no subsurface map because all of my UVs are mapped from the bottom to the top, which means I'm going to use the UV coordinates as a subsurface mask. I also have this vert painted. I can see that here, so it's black to green at the top. Yeah, and you know, it's a little high try count for something close up, but it's certainly not too bad. It's going to be really nice for filling out the area, especially since you can grow it vertically if you wanted to. So let's make that grass material. And the reason I'm going to do grass is because we're going to potentially down the line do some other stuff with the grass to make it stand out. So I'm going to just call this matte grass. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and switch it to two-sided foliage. And I'm actually going to grab my texture. One way to add textures in, by the way, is selecting it in the material editor and just hitting D instead of, or hitting T instead of dragging it in. So yeah, I've also got to set this to masked, which means I can use my opacity mask, which is great. And now I have grass, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to go in and some of this will be really quick. I'm just going to make a quick roughness. That's the value of 0.8. I don't have, I do have a normal map for this texture. Grab here, this is the normal. Oops, it's to a parameter normal. And for stuff like this where there are not going to be a ton of values, I'm probably not going to go crazy with the organizational stuff. It really comes down to user preference. But for me right now, I know exactly what I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to keep it pretty simple. So the specular I'm going to actually parameterize, so now we have grass. Now the nice thing about the foliage model is that it supports subsurface scattering. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to grab. I'm actually going to use the vertex color, the green vertex channel, and just say this is the mask. So I'm going to multiply. I'm going to multiply the mask of the green, which is a gradient from the top down, I'm going to multiply that by, actually, you know what? I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use, because there are different heights of grass, and I don't want the subsurface scattering to be uniform, so I'm going to use it off of the UV channel. The nice thing about texture coordinates is the image of a texture coordinate plugin actually looks like that, so you can go in and you can mask out, actually I need to multiply, you can mask out individual channels and just grab like a mathematically generated coordinate or gradient. So look, if I look at this, I now have a gradient from top to bottom, which is great. So I'm going to actually use the 1 minus node, which is, you know, because this is a value between 0 and 1, it's going to invert it. And I'm going to multiply the diffuse texture by this. And then I'm also going to multiply it by a couple things. I'm going to do a just for extra control, because who knows what we're going to need. I'm going to make a color and call this subsurface tinting, in case we want to change that color a little bit, in case we don't like the color that, we'll keep it white for now. And then, yeah, in case we don't like the color of that subsurface image. And I'm actually going to put in the color first and the boost second. And this is going to be the SSS multiplier. And that way, because changing color inherently changes the number value, I don't want to accidentally set it really high and then set it to a different color and have that entire amount change. Yeah, so now I've got a really, really simple grass material. And I'm actually going to go up to material. I'm going to create a material instance mi grass 06. Move this into my instances, and then I'm actually going to create a material instance called this mi grass 007. And I made a material instance of the instance, which means any value that I don't change in the first instance or in the second instance will be the same as the first instance, not the same as the base material. So if I find that all grass needs to be tinted green, I can do an example. I need all grass to be yellow. Now if I open, oh, I did that in the wrong one. So if I need all grass in the base to be tinted green, now if I wasn't changing this, it would actually come in as green, or it should do, yeah. It would come in as that vibrant-y green, which you can kind of see. I don't know what the compression's going to do to the video. So I'm going to kill that. And then on the 7 version, I've got a different set of textures. So I'm just going to plug in my different normal map. I call that good on those. And then I'm actually going to open up my model for the grass patches that I have. And I'm going to plug in these new material instances that I made. So for 7, I'm going to plug it in. You have to plug it in for each LOD. And they're not super high poly. It also looks like two-sided is not on by default. So I should fix that. Which means going into here, saying two-sided. There we go. Look at that, way better. Yeah, how about that? It looks like grass. One thing you're going to notice is that Unreal's mipping is really going to fight with foliage. And they've got some options to fix that, and we'll talk about it a bit later, but sometimes you just got to brute force it. So I'm going to go in and apply this in, and we got grass, which is awesome. And you can now see the grass there. Which is, it's a little dark, and we can play with that later. It's looking good. We're seeing some dark spots. It's coming from the normal shading a little bit. Even though that it is like a flattened normal, we are going to inherently see some stuff pop up. One thing I'm going to do, just because I'm thinking about it, is I'm going to change this light to movable. I'm more or less going to light this whole scene as dynamic. There are, different lighting options for different lighting types, but for the most part, I really want to keep this as dynamic as possible, so that if you wanted to have a times of day change and stuff like that. And we'll talk about ways to populate grass out later. Get the these are really small. But yeah, so it's a start. It's certainly getting the ball rolling on the foliage stuff. So we're gonna do a couple more things. I want the ability to desaturate the grass through a parameter. And then I also want the ability to tint the grass. And this is so that, we can have different colors there. Because I have a feeling that the default grass is a little too dark. Change that tinting color by default to white. And the desaturation amount's going to let us actually play with that. That way we can remove influence from the base color and switch it over. So let's apply that. And now if I wanted to, I'm going to go in here and just enable the grass tint to stay locked on instance 7. At instance 6 I'm going to go in and just play a little bit with the grass tint just to see if we can get a different color. Remove some of that influence. And I'm noticing that I'm noticing a couple of things. One is that the SSS is a little low. So doing stuff like that is definitely going to help. But you can see that it's lighting wrong from the wrong side if we do that. So I actually think we're going to need to add in just a simple boost. And I'm actually going to plug it in after the desaturation. So this is grass boost, grass diffuse boost. Okay. I know it seems like I'm doing it backwards if I'm going back and changing this every time, but there is a reason for that, and I will get to that. So now we can actually go in, and if we wanted to brighten it up just a little bit, we could. And shadows are causing some of these problems. We're going to get into lighting and stuff in a bit. If I were to go in to the lighting and actually up the cascade to a little bit higher number, it's going to even out the lighting on the grass a little bit better too. But yeah, we're starting to get there. We're starting to see some of the results that we want to get. Yeah, it's a good start. So the last thing I want to do is I want to add movement to the grass. And I know, I'm probably what you're gonna see of this, at least in the magazine, is gonna be a still, but I want the ability to have my grass wiggle and move around. So Epic has, fantastically enough, included a really nice material function called Simple Grass Wind. And what Simple Grass Wind is what a material function is it's a chunk of shader that you can plug into places. In this case, it's a bunch of math. What that math is doing is generating a bunch of movement patterns for the grass. And I can show you, I'm going to close all this, I can show you exactly what that looks like. So, where you plug world stuff that changes the world offset is into the world position offset, and that's going to mess with the location of every vert. So I'm going to I'm going to pick a scalar for wind intensity. It's going to be wind intensity. And then wind weight is actually going to be the vertex color. Oop, not that. Because we have that grain that's going to go from top to bottom. And then we need additional world position offset, which is if you're making any other changes to it. But I'm going to keep it flat. So what is this going to do? Well, we can see what it's going to do really, really simply. Wind intensity is at 0. Set this to 1. Apply that. So what is it doing? It is sending little balls of rotation through the grass, and that is pretty neat. It's also not quite what we want. So what are things that we would want from this? Well, one, we want to be able to control the influence, right? We may not want the full, all of that motion to be circular. We may want it to be flat as well. And because world position offsets are vector offsets, we can multiply it by a vector to change the strength of each element. So in this case, I'm going to make this it's called a wind strength parameter. I'm calling it a wind strength parameter. I'm going to keep x and y at 1, and I'm going to drop z to 0.1. And what this is going to do is it's going to, you can see it removes a lot of the up and down movement. And I actually think I maybe have gone too far, so I'm going to go back up to like 2.5 or something like that. Now, you can double click on a function to see what it's made of, and you can actually edit them yourself. And I'm not going to go into crazy detail about what's going on here, but there are two important things that I actually want to change. One is here, and this is the wind. This is the wind direction, actually. So I'm actually going to change that input to be an actual parameter, just because I want to have that control myself. So I'm going to actually going to go in here and change this to say wind direction. And then what you can do when you set up parameters, you can actually set a default, and then you can say yes, use the default when it doesn't have an input, which means it will run without having an input there. So by default, we want it to just be, it's, you know, apparently in the y direction. The other thing that I want to do is looking at right here and right here. You can see the influences of two different passes for making wind size, like how big these rotational forces moving through the environment are going to be. I actually want control over that, so I'm going to make a new, I'm going to grab the scalar input and just duplicate this, and just call this wave size small, and wave size big. And for the preview of the small, I could put in 200 and link that there, and then preview for the big, that like that. What this means is now I can change those numbers on my own. So I can make a bunch of new parameters now back in my actual material. You can see it updated. We'll call this wind direction. Definitely not like the band. And I want everything moving in the x coordinate, but we're going to hook that there. And then we're going to want two scalar parameters, wind size, wind size small, and then wind size large. And for the large, for grass, I already know. Because I've done this, you know, with tests. I don't actually want something that big. So I'm going to do 600 and 100. And then we also have a wind speed. I'm going to set that to 1. So now the advantage of the opposite way I made those material systems is that I only have to update my first grass material instance to see all these changes. So that's starting already to look a good deal more believable. I would definitely tweak parts of this, and I probably will, as we go forward and it starts to annoy me more. But it's a start. The one last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change this world offset, the base world offset, to be a parameter. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I believe the additional WPO is added in as the position. And it's also added in at the end. The key math about this is that they're using these procedurally generated spheres to rotate the mesh around parts of the axis. But the additional WPO is going to mean this. Is that if we open up the material instance, we can drop this down, we could actually, maybe I'm not doing this, nope, my bad. So I want to multiply this by the vertex color. So that if I add value to it, it's going to scale up the mesh. So now, it's not doing it perfectly, but I can make my grass taller or shorter, which is really cool. And we'll be doing stuff with that later. Anywho, so we've got our grass material set up. I'm gonna go in, close this out. World position offset stuff. This is base grass, and then I'm gonna take all of these parameters and at least group them by wind so that we got all that together. And now you can see it's nicely grouped in the window. And I'm gonna do some really quick tweaking. Just gonna tweak the strength of that. Yeah, so starting to get the ball rolling, but I wanted to go through that wind explanation because there is a technique that I want to use in the trees that is very similar. You'll understand why in a sec. So I'm just doing another safety check to make sure everything's still recording. So it is at 3872. 874. We're good. Okay, so keeping everything moving. We have our grass material. We have our leaf so we have our grass material, and we have our blend material, which is, both of those are pretty integral into what we're going to be doing. The last thing I want to do is I want to take care of the trees. And the trees, I'm going to pretty much use the same principle that I used for the grass, but I'm going to make a little adjustment. And that adjustment, I'm actually going to keep all of this the same. This is the tree leaf first. I'm going to separate them out. I'm going to use I'm going to use a second version of this exact pattern, and I want it to only happen in the two-dimensional axis, and then I'm going to add it to the rest. And the reason I'm doing this is because my trees, I want to have this little leaf movement, but I also want them to blow back and forth. If you're using SpeedTree, there's all kinds of great ways to do it, to be included with that, but I'm not in SpeedTree. For this project, we're just doing straight up geo importing. So if I actually visualize this, you can see, okay, this is a bad example because this one has no leaves. This is just the twig model, but if I grab this one, you can actually see all of my leaves, and I've done a pretty high try count, like individual leaves. They all have the red controlling the leaf motion, but the green is, or sorry, the blue is